Martial World Teyvat Chapter 3, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Keqing was typically rather fair, but stern in Genshin Impact from what I knew of her, as she didn't have much coverage in the Liyue storyline and I never played the game when she actually had some events with herself in it. But as I snapped a sword in half over my knee by using a towel and a small iron rod to focus on the sword's obvious stress point. Oh, she was all but spitting mad. Keqing then lightly stomped in impatience as then she held out a hand and said firmly, "Let me double-check you, hold out your hand." I didn't hesitate, I just held out my hand and her minorly calloused hand took my wrist and I felt a heat fill my wrist and fill my arm that was like the warmth of a thick blanket coming out of a dryer or relaxing on a chilly day in the warm sun's rays. "You don't have cultivation or magical energy?" She noted and then raised an eyebrow as she looked up at me and flatly stated, "You don't have any ki either." I nodded and used the excuse I had already cooked up. Orphan, so I never had the resources to learn and take care of myself to fuel myself during such training, but learning mundane science is free in the public library, so I learned as much as I could, I answered, and she blinked before her eyes softened and she nodded in understanding. "I see. Well, your acupoints are decently developed, so you would have a decent talent for martial arts like most from Mondstadt. Still, without further testing using special tools or ritual sites, I cannot see your cultivation or vision potential." She mused to herself before she sighed and let go of my hand to cover her eyes with that hand as she visibly took a deep breath. Held it for a long minute and then released it in such a way I could all but hear the inner scream coming from within her mind. I patiently remained silent and let her process her thoughts, and she didn't disappoint as she grumbled to herself. And then she literally kicked a stool through a wall with the foot arcing with purple lightning, and as she stared at the hole through the workshop wall, all the workers silently held their heads down and refused to look over there. "I have to trust these weapons to keep my men alive, Jake Barris," she said softly as she stared at the broken wall. Then she continued with that soft yet cold and chilling voice. "Liyue supported the Ling clan in their smiths going off to become strong smiths and becoming cultivators and martial artists. But that investment has now paid us back in arrogant martial artists and cultivators who pass off their debt of forged weaponry to neophytes incapable of forging." She held out her hand towards me and a flicker of light formed upon her palm was a jade green card. "Here, this is worth a lot of gold coins as it's a mid-grade spirit stone that's actually valuable to even myself." Keqing took a breath and said coldly, "You shouldn't catch any blame for this from the Ling clan. They are clearly at fault and we would have given them a harsh reminder within the next few weeks either way. But you only sped this up. If you have something worth Liyue sponsoring your experiments, come to me for weapons, and do further research yourself if your projects have other values." She finished and then she sparked with literally, and I closed my eyes instinctively as she became a bolt of lightning that shot out of the hole in the building, leaving me standing there awkwardly in the millilith workshop. I quickly beat a retreat from the workshop at the awkward stares of the workers there, and as I left I made sure to keep the spirit stone in my palm, within my jacket pocket, so I couldn't lose it. Now the question is, can I buy a house with a single middle-grade spirit stone? I muttered to myself under my breath as I didn't know the value of property here in Liyue, to say nothing beyond Keqing's words that the stone was actually supposed to be worth a lot of gold coins, which was the most valuable lesser coinage. So after some thought, I decided to go use this side of Liyue's bank to see and gather more information. The Liyue bank was a massive structure in of itself, and I realized this would be a hellish thing to raid or steal from, as just coming into the bank I saw how mounted on the second floor of the bank there were guards with oversized crossbows mounted on the railing, all with glistening metal wires pulled back and aiming spiked bolts at the people walking below to deal with would-be troublemakers. Also, the structure itself was clearly built to withstand great punishment, as the roof was held up by thick pillars of dense limestone that had bronze metal bands wrapped around the limestone to reinforce it. Either way, I quickly stopped gawking like a bumpkin and made my way over to an empty teller who gave me a practiced smile as she gave a clearly rehearsed line. "Hello, welcome to Liyue's Southern Bank, how may I be of assistance?" I responded clearly and without a rush. I was curious as to where I could go to acquire property here in Liyue and believed the bank would be the appropriate place to start. Also, I was curious as to the current conversion rate for medium-grade spiritual stones to gold coins. She blinked before she smiled and said understandingly, "Ah, you are foreign. So you are not aware. Well, here in Liyue, spiritual stone prices are heavily regulated and kept at a high price to keep them available and not snatched up by the clans and dojos in mass. Either way, a medium-grade refined spiritual stone is worth as per usual 100 low-quality spiritual stones, and each low-quality stone is worth 1,000 gold coins, leading to a single medium stone being worth 100,000. But rather than gold coins to break down such a stone, we use gold tokens with spiritual stone dust mixed into its melting, so they cannot be minted without cost in of themselves. She explained before taking a breath and containing naturally. As for property. Yes, indeed, the United Bank of Liyue has many properties within the city of Liyue and some outside the walls of the city, though those are recommended to only be sold to martial artists or cultivators for obvious reasons. She finished and I blinked at the news before smiling wryly as her words were all too damned true. I came across the grudge monster just walking to Liyue in the bright cheery morning light of the day. I didn't want to imagine what it was like out there in the dark. After a moment of thought, I responded. May I get a listing of properties or something to that effect? I asked, and then came the fun process of property hunting as she led me into the back behind the teller area into an office area. And then took out a folder with simple drawings of properties, their limits, and the surrounding properties. We went back and forth, about stuff like the size of the house. The laws in Liyue for more mechanical and industrial places so the people wouldn't be complaining about noise, and of course the danger price. Liyue, as you know, even as a foreigner and new to the city, has 3 districts, the industrial, business, and of course port docking section on the eastern part of the city. In the middle of the city is the government and lesser clan section. While on the western and north side of the city are the 5 true dojos, the 4 great clans, and the temples and inns for visiting cultivators. Either way, the closer you are to the northwestern part of Liyue, the safer you are from any demons that manage to sneak into the city. She explained. Either way, I didn't have the money to get a premium home in the safest area of the city, so after looking through the listings I found a decent house with a large shed that I could operate out of. And of course, the cost was suspiciously dirt cheap. So why is this house so cheap with it being almost in the lesser clan area? I asked curiously, and her lips twitched. For a moment she didn't respond, and then she smiled and said shamelessly. Oh, the last 7 buyers were all found to have died after getting their yang sucked dry from their bodies by the spirit of the first owner. I raised a finger as I was about to deny the property, as I didn't want to mess with a fucking ghost. But then she continued blandly. Truly, I don't blame her. The last 7 buyers attempted to harvest the ghost woman's energy and paid for it with their lives. She said she doesn't mind having a roommate or someone technically owning the property, but the other cultivators and martial artists of Liyue don't dare mess with her due to her being strong, cruel, and highly unreasonable to those that offend her. She said with some kind of fucking idolization in her damned voice. I flatly respond. Nope, I have to check behind the curtain of my shower before I go to the bathroom. I don't think I could live with an actual fucking ghost. Half off listed price. She responded equally flatly, and our eyes met in a silent contest of wills. But in the end, I needed the damned money. Fine. But if I die, I am going to haunt you in particular. I said with a cold smile, and she shivered and looked at me unsurely at how I so assuredly said I was going to fucking haunt her ass till the end of her time. Either way, I signed the paperwork, traded that medium-grade spirit stone to her, and got some smaller poor-quality spirit stones along with those spiritual gold coins as well as change. And finally, I was given a key to the house, and the woman exhaled in relief at the whole process going through. Hey, if you survive for a month, come look up and I will buy us dinner to celebrate. She said cheerfully, and all but fucking skipping out of the office while my eye twitched at the sight.